for the upcoming 2.6 patch, we want to start digging into balance on a larger scale than we have done before. Kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit, not too far, obviously. So that meant finding out, where do we start? What's the first thing we do? There's always dependencies with everything. So try and find the fundamental thing that we might end up changing that's going to affect a lot of other things. The flight model was that thing. And what we decided, and what we started to do to test it, was to pick one ship. We picked the Gladius. We lowered the SCM speed to try and make combat not really slower, but a little easier to control, and so you're not flying backwards and forth at really high speeds. I mean, the Newtonian physics that we use, the IFCS flight model, is complicated, it's complex, it allows for a lot of depth to the combat, but it's also kind of intimidating, especially when you've got an SCM speed of 350. You've got ships going really fast and a lot of throttle management to do to get decent in combat. So we took the Gladius, we lowered the speeds down to about, I think, 140. I mean, it's like a rough halving of the speeds to see how it would affect gameplay. And then rebalanced a few ships around that. Okay, make everything slower. How does that feel in a dogfight situation? And also, not just speeds-wise, but we sped up the accelerations. So the stop times were lower, which meant there was less slide when it comes to ship maneuverability. It can take a little bit of time to get to top acceleration when you're turning, so that staggers the speeds as well. Makes everything feel heavier, gives the ships more character. But to sort of fill that gap where we've cut into the SCM speeds, we've made some changes to the afterburner. We'll be making further changes to the afterburner, but we wanted to tweak the fuel limits on that so people used it more. The idea that in a combat situation, if you're not moving fast enough or if you need to escape faster, afterburner is what you'd use now, because it should be like something that you don't use all the time, something you use every now and then, that just gets you out of a combat situation if you need to. Afterburner didn't really have that much of a purpose before. Now it does. We set up some tests where all the designers were invited to play test and see what their opinions of it were, and it was mostly positive, say overwhelmingly positive, which has meant we've put together a patch based on the 2.5 build. So it's like an interim patch that includes fixes, rebalancing of the ship speeds. But we'll go out to Evocati for them to play test and give us feedback on that. And eventually more players will get to try it too, if it's favourable. Or if it's not, we'll still try and make changes based on that too. Ship flight, ship handling is the main fundamental. What we build upon from there is, in ship balancing, will be ship shields, ship health, missiles and weapons. Right now I'm starting to look at weapons, but we've already done a pass, which should be in the Evocati build as well, on shields. And what we did was, we've got some sort of pre-planned numbers, future numbers, where we wanted to take the shields later when they'll be redeveloped and refactored. We sort of ported those into the old system we have with the shields, which should mean we get a little taster of how those shield classes might perform. And I expect there'll be a lot of feedback on that, and there'll be a lot to change. But that's why we did it. It's a good chance for Evocati to get hands on it and go, that's not quite right. And we'll react to that when we can. But yeah, the missile changes, I think Johnny will be talking a bit more about that.
So the problem we have with our current missile rack system is a lot of the missile racks are bespoke to ships, and that they're tied onto them. You can't swap them out for any others. You can swap the missiles in and out, but we'd rather you have the choice to be able to swap it out for a different rack of a different size, so you can put different size missiles on there if you prefer more of smaller ones or a less amount of larger missiles. Another problem is that a lot of the size allocations we had on the missile racks that we've got at the moment is that some would be size 3 that can hold, for example, 2 size 3 missiles, and some will be size 2 that can hold 2 size 3 missiles. So we really wanted to just bring all that in line, fix the problems with that, and then obviously build a system that's flexible enough to allow you to swap in and out these missile racks. Say, for example, if you don't have a ship that has a bespoke missile rack on there, like the Starfarer Gemini rack on the front or the Constellation wings, you'll be able to use one of these new missile racks. The Frankfurters have been working very hard on actually making all of the missiles the correct size, so all size 1 missiles, instead of being having huge variances in sizes, they'll now be the same size, but we'll still have the opportunity to make them look unique. And this just means that instead of having these different size missiles floating away from missile racks, they'll actually be connected to the missile racks properly, will disconnect properly, and it'll look good. If you play something like an FPS, you'll have your sniper rifle as something that is the long-range powerful shot weapon. You'll have your SMG that is your burst, kind of like high rate of fire, low damage, kind of high spread weapon. You'll have a shotgun that's high spread, very high damage. So we kind of wanted to reflect that in our ship weapons, so that if someone's using a cannon, you immediately know that they'll be trying to engage you with it from long range. A repeater, you'll kind of have an idea of what the fire rate will be, kind of how much damage it will cause and things like that. So that's not to say that all cannons will be the same and all repeaters will be the same. There are many different things that can have varying effects on the ship weapon statistics. So if it's, for example, an energy weapon over a ballistic weapon, it might fire faster, it might consume more power. And if you've got additional things under energy, so additional damage types under energy, so if it's a laser weapon, if it's a plasma weapon, there'll be different attributes to the projectile it fires, but also to possibly the gun's rate of fire, its power consumption, its accuracy, and all of these things. We want to get these changes in on our current set of weapons, just to make sure that we can get those locked down first and make sure we get them feeling good with the new flight model, and then in the near future we'll hopefully start getting some more variation in there, getting some of these additional damage types in, and making these weapons feeling more and more unique.